YouTube, back at it again with another author interview. This one in person at my favorite black-owned bookstore, Small Place Bookshop, with the incredible, the illustrious, the amazing Channelle Desamours, author of They Call Her Regret, a book she's going to be talking about for the next hour 30 minutes. So I'm not going to hold y'all for too long. I enjoyed this conversation a whole bunch. I hope y'all enjoy it too. Enjoy. All right, y'all. Thank y'all for pulling up. Thank everybody for pulling up. Today we're going to be talking about They Call Her Regret by Miss Channelle Desamours, but I want to make sure y'all know who Miss Channelle Desamours is, okay? So, Channelle Desamours is a high school science teacher from Atlanta, Georgia, who loves writing tales about magical black girls. When she's not napping to recover from her 5 a.m. writing sessions, she can be found building tiny homes on the Sims floor or tending to her houseplants. She's the author of Needy Little Things, a New York Public Library Best Book of the Year, and her newest book, They Call Her Regret. So please, everybody give it up for Miss Channelle Desamours. Woo woo! Thank you for pulling up, Channelle. I've really been looking forward to this conversation, honestly.
Me too.
So,
Thank you guys for having me.
I'm going to go ahead and start with the question that's been on my mind for a minute. I was wondering where I should start, but I said, you know what? What's been on my mind since I saw this book is the title. They Call Her Regret. So I really want to know, like, how did you come up with the title They Call Her Regret?
Yeah, that title came to me years before I started writing the book. And I just thought it sounded cool. I was like, They Call Her Regret sounds like a great book title. I have like kind of an ongoing note in my notes app just for title ideas. Nice. So just combinations of words, and sometimes that sparks information. So like that combination of words came to me, They Call Her Regret. I thought obviously that would be some kind of thriller horror situation, but it just kind of sat there for a while, and then some other things happened later that kind of sparked an idea that I thought that would suit that title perfectly. So yeah, the title actually came first, and I'm really lucky because sometimes with like traditional publishing, you know, they'll have you change your titles and stuff, but I got lucky 2 for 2. They liked them, so yeah.
That was going to be my next question, if you had any other titles in mind, but this was the one and only.
From the beginning. Yep.
Okay, well, since we talked about the title, we got to talk about this cover. I really love the cover. I feel like it set the stage for how ominous it is. You have the cabin, you have the lady in the middle of the cabin, but I can't lie. When I saw the UK cover, I said, I might have to get that one. So I want to ask you, which cover do you like more, the US or the UK?
I love them both, and I think they both kind of capture different elements. And the cover process was really fun. I'm super pleased and super lucky that like the first draft they sent of the cover is very similar to the final. I was like, that looks great. We had like changed a little bit about like the way the woman in the window looked. She had straight hair at first, and I was like, no, we need to make a little more texture in there. There were like these little creepy little baby dolls down here. Those got added later. And then this mystical looking smoke. At first it kind of looked like flames. I was like, well, the house is not on fire, so we added the color. But yeah, I love the cover. I think it fits the creepy vibe. This is like, is that spoilery? This is someone, someone in the book, and you'll kind of hear more about her and like the cabin and all that. But yeah, the UK cover, I should have brought a copy. But yeah, that one you can actually see someone coming up out of the water.
Yes,
amazing.
Yeah,
you can see someone coming up out of the water, and actually they made that, and I wrote a scene back into the book to match that after the fact. Because there was always like, towards the end, there's like some stuff going on with the water. But there's a scene, and I know y'all won't know what I'm talking about, but where the main character Simone is on the computer, and her computer like goes left. Yeah. So that cover kind of inspired adding like a little bit of that moment, because I was like,
that's cool. If you go on Libro.fm and look at They Call Her Regret, there's a sample audio that'll give you 5 minutes, and it starts at that chapter. Well, I think right after when she goes on the computer and the crazy thing happens. It's right after that. So we want to sample of the audiobook.
The audiobook is amazing too. The narrator, Crystalline Lloyd, did a fantastic job voicing all the characters. So I really loved the audio, if you do audiobooks.
I should have started off with this, but could you briefly tell us, for everybody that hasn't read the book, what they call
what
Her
it's
Regret?
about? Yeah. So They Call Her Regret follows Simone Washington, who has some dark secrets in her past that she's pretty determined to keep buried. So as a distraction, she loves horror and party planning, so she decides to throw her 18th birthday party at a creepy cabin in the woods, because what could go wrong, right? Well, everything goes wrong, and her friend ends up drowning in a tragic accident. And it's at this point that Simone is confronted by a cursed witch named Regret, who offers her a deal. If Simone will agree to try to figure out how to break the curse and free her within 14 days, then her best friend's life will be immediately restored, and she will eliminate all those regrets from Simone's past. However, if Simone fails to uphold her end of the bargain, then her best friend will die again, and she will be the one to kill her. Ooh. So, big stakes. It's definitely like a spooky, speculative mystery, but it is also very much about the lengths we'll go to protect the people that we love, including ourselves. So.
And it's even better than it sounds, and it sounds amazing. I'm telling you. And with how I want to talk about how this is a young adult novel, but going in, I honestly didn't expect. I don't read that much young adult, to be fair. I didn't expect certain parts of this to be as dark as they were, as like unsettling, as ominous. So I really want to know, as a young adult author, how do you balance making a young adult book scary and dark, but not too scary and dark so that it still stays in that young adult mode? Because I'm sure there's things you can't do when you're writing primarily for children versus primarily for adults.
Yeah, I think my being a high school teacher helps me with this a lot. And I think one of the things I like to keep in mind first and foremost is to not underestimate young people, especially that teenage age group, right? The adolescent years. They can comprehend a lot more than sometimes we give them credit for. And I think also, like, teenagers are, I think, a lot more, they like to think they're more grown than they are, right? And I think sometimes adults can think they're more childlike than they are. So kind of finding that balance. So you can say anything you want to say, like, and because teenagers can experience anything that adults can too, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. So just giving them credit that they are at that stage of life, they're developing their sense of self and right and wrong and who they're going to be in life. So I don't like to shy away from any particular topic, but as far as like meeting them where they are and not doing too much, I guess, I just try to remember that these characters have been on their own individual journeys, and just really try to make sure that the voices are unique and that I can write them in a way that that you can root for the character even if you don't like them or necessarily agree with them. So I think making sure that you develop the characters in a way where your reader can understand why they're making the choices they're making, even if you wouldn't personally make them. Because I think that's what sometimes can frustrate adults reading younger characters. Is just like, why would you? It's just like you just can't. It's just like that's you know that brain's not done cooking, and it's very evident, and it's frustrating in a way. But I think if you can set it up where there's enough of the backstory that you can say, okay, well, based on what I know about you, I get it. I don't like it, I don't agree with it, whatever, but I get it. And that kind of can push you to keep reading and want to know what happens to them. And at least carry you through the end, whether it's a character that you really enjoy or a character that's just annoying you.
100%. And that's one of my pet peeves with young adult books, man. I'll read a scene and I'm like, come on. I would never do that. Then everybody says, they're kids, they're teenagers. I'm like, I wouldn't do it. No.
But the big thing with the kids is understanding why they're behaving the way they're behaving. If it's just, you just see a kid just acting just all over the place, just being wild and crazy, you don't have any context for the behavior, it's going to be annoying to the point where you just don't want to be bothered with it. But when you understand what just happened that led to why they're acting that way. So that's what happens. I walk in a room at work and the kids are acting wild, and you have to know like what led to this, because they're not just doing that for no reason. Something's going on. So getting that context makes a big difference. And in a book, obviously, you don't want to dump all that context at the beginning because that takes you out of it. So it's kind of this balance between giving just enough so you can kind of like stay in it, but also keep the fun of the suspense and learning things as you go and get to put together some of those pieces later. So that's kind of stuff that happens in revision, like getting that balance just right between giving just enough so that everyone understands and stays invested, but not too much to where it's like takes the fun out of it.
I think you did it really well too. This is a mystery, so there's all types of twisty types.
Yeah.
But you spoke on your job as a high school teacher, writing young adult literature. Do the experiences in the classroom influence how you write or the themes that you put into your stories?
Oh yeah, I'm nosy. I listen because they got some stories. Like it's inspiring, and they love to just chat. I mean, they know I write books, and now they ask me like, "Are you gonna put this in a book?" I'm like, "Maybe." And they think, the ones who've read it, they think every character was inspired by them personally. Like, I'm like, I came up with that character for you, Born. But yes, absolutely. I mean, and I think, and I really appreciate that I have a job that keeps me fresh and in contact with teenagers in real time and how they behave, because they change quickly. I mean, I started teaching many moons ago, and it's different. And the things they care about, things that they talk about are different. But I love writing for teenagers, and I think there's so much we can learn from young people, and should pause to just listen to them for a little while, because sometimes, they're goofy, but sometimes they have some really smart things to say. I notice there are a lot of ways that I think that they are skills that they have that are stronger than older generations, like particularly like talking about mental health and things like that. They have skills with that and don't have the same kind of shame surrounding it that some older generations have. And it's just kind of really impressive to me sometimes to hear them have these conversations. I'm like, okay, like you're goofy, but you got some points. Like
That's interesting. I was gonna ask that, but you answered it. If your students knew that their teacher was this incredible author, but it sounds like they do. So how was that then? Because I know a lot of authors don't like to say they job, but they.
Well, I mix. And no, what I love is before I even became a published author. So when I first started teaching, it was like during the big dystopian boom of like the 2010s, Hunger Games, Divergent, all that. And all my students were carrying around these books. I'm like, what is this that has y'all all like, it's so invested? So I was like, so I picked up Divergent and I read it because like they wanted to talk about it. I was like, hey, my students are interested in reading. Like, what is this book that's got them like this? So I read it, and I've always like enjoyed reading, but I've kind of been on and off with it. And same with writing, I've always kind of done it in the background. But I read Divergent, and that kind of was my entry back into reading and writing. And when I looked up the author, she was around my age. I was like, maybe I could do this too. So that was around the time where I said, I think I might want to write a book. And I told my students, because we were talking about that book, and I was like, hey, I like to write. I want to write a book too. And I told them, and then 10 years later, almost, when my first book was published, I actually had 2 former students show up to my launch event who were like, I remember Miss D when you said you wanted to, and I was like, I saw. It's crazy. Yeah, I went to a book festival in Boston and ran into a former student who was like, I remember you wanted to, and it just feels like, it felt so like, it's just one of those things, like I encourage them and just tell them like, things will take time in your life, but chase your dreams with everything. Like, it just keep going. And I love to be that example for them. Like, it's so special to me that they can see that journey, that it took a while, but I did it. And, they're still super young. And yeah, so it's just, that's great. But yeah, my current students, I have a couple of copies in my room if they want to grab them to read, So, hey, and I have a student, his name is Corey, and he found out that there's a character named Corey. And of course he's like, is it after me? I'm like, I met you 2 weeks ago.
Yes, it is.
Because you spelled my name wrong. I was like, So he's like, can I borrow it? And I was like, yes, you can borrow it. He borrowed it. It came back beat up, tore up. I'm like, it's yours now. Thank you for reading them. But yeah, so it's cool. And you know, it's young adult, so it's in the library at school too. And
that's cool. Your book is in the school library.
Yeah. My debut, Needy Little Thing, is on the Helen Ruffin Reading Bowl list for next year. So it'll be in a lot of high school libraries.
That's
so,
amazing.
Yeah, so it's really, one of my students came and she had it all annotated, like your copy. She had the tabs in there, and she had voice notes that she had recorded. She's like, Miss D,
you gotta do that.
sit down, we gotta talk. I was like, so I love that so much.
That is cool. I love that you're so open. You're so open.
Some of them don't care, and that's cool too. They're like, write books.
That's amazing, because it is inspirational being able to see someone who said they were going to do something, end up doing it, and they're loud and proud about it. Makes you feel like I might be able to do that too.
Yeah, I love that it took me a while though.
Yeah.
I love that they could see that too, but sometimes it takes a while.
Yeah, good things take time, like they say. I want to get into some of the characters. We brought up Simone Washington, and this book, they call her Regret, opens up in a bathroom stall. Our main character, Simone Washington's favorite bathroom stall, actually. And she said something that I had to kind of pause after she said, because I feel like it was very amazing, really profound, and kind of made me think about the bigger things of the book. She says, sometimes I wonder if it's possible for a living person to haunt a place. And I feel like that quote is so perfect for a lot of the things in this book. So I want to know what inspired that line, and how does that one line connect to the larger themes? Because this book talks about a lot.
Yeah, I think, so, you know, there's a lot of, obviously, talk about like regret and things like that. So I've always just been really interested in emotions like regret, grief, love versus kind of emotions that you can feel throughout a day, like quicker ones like happiness, sadness, but those ones that kind of can run in the background for a continuous time period. That's really just interesting, and especially for like this adolescent age group where they might be experiencing those kinds of things for the very first time. So you have these big firsts, which makes it that much more weighty for these characters. It feels so all or nothing. They're at a stage of life where it feels like one thing is like a whole value judgment on who they are. So I think that's really interesting. So that idea of these kind of emotions that linger, combined with, she's talking about like her mom in this scene and how her mom's not around right now. And then this kind of idea between people who are absent from our lives, does it really matter whether they're like physically absent, like gone forever, or just not here? Like their personal experience of that is the same, right? You're not in my life. So this idea of being haunted by someone who's actually still here was just really interesting to me. And I think it's something that people experience all the time. Like you can, if someone's choosing not to be in your life or cannot be in your life for whatever reason, but you have a strong connection to them anyway, that's like your own personal haunting. Like they're lingering there. And that's something that she's exploring. Plus the actual kind of real hauntings.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's why I liked it so much. It just felt like it was so multifaceted in that one instance. I want to talk about some more characters though. You have Simone. One of my favorites, well not really my favorite, but the character I gotta bring up is Rick.
Yeah.
Within the first 3 pages, matter of fact, maybe the first 3 paragraphs, you see off rip that Simone does not like Rich. And because she didn't like him, I kind of didn't like him, I'll be honest. So I want to know, at the same time though, there's scenes in the book where he genuinely seems like a compassionate guy, seems kind, he helps somebody out. So I want to know, how do you approach writing a character like Rich, where you don't want the readers to root for him, but you don't want the readers to completely hate him?
Yeah, I think those kinds of characters is you do have to kind of sprinkle in that occasional thing that makes you pause and say, well, that was nice, that was
He's
thoughtful.
human.
Yeah, and I think that is such an important thing about villain characters, and he wasn't like necessarily a villain. We can debate about that, but just making sure that they don't, I guess, just villain versus just outright monster kind of characters. The characters that are just evil for no reason or just seem to not have any complex emotions behind them, just one-dimensional. So, he's kind of just your classic, just kind of knucklehead teen boy, and he's very, and I know a lot of him, but and like even my own high school experience, I remember boys like him.
Yeah.
And he's the type that's kind of like charming, and you don't understand why the girls like him, but then he does something that's kind of sweet, and you're like, oh, I guess I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think just making sure that you're hearing Simone's experience of him, but when you see him on the page and he's speaking for himself, I wanted the reader to be able to kind of compare what Simone is saying about him to what they're actually seeing him do, and kind of draw some conclusions, or just kind of just understand that maybe there's a little bit more there.
Okay.
And I think, so at first, all you're getting is what she's saying about him. You meet him, you see some things he does, and as we go throughout the story, you're having to remember that this is first-person narration. You're getting the perspective of the main character only. And that perspective can be flawed and inaccurate in ways. And as you learn more, you might change your opinion about certain characters.
Yeah, that's powerful, because especially since this is a mystery, I keep bringing that up because there's so many twists. You will have one opinion on the character, and then this happens, or you might think this character isn't even here, and the reveal is crazy. I want to talk about the twists and turns. This is something I always wanted to ask a mystery author. Does the twist come first or the plot? Like, how do y'all come up? Sometimes I read a mystery and I'm like, there's no way you knew this was going to happen. What comes first? How did you come up with this?
Yeah, I didn't know any of the twists that were going to happen in the first draft.
Okay.
A lot of that comes in the revisions. I mean, I had an idea for some of the bigger stuff, but so much of that gets fleshed out throughout the process. And as I personally get to know the characters as I write, some of that stuff reveals to me, like, it sounds kind of cheesy, but like, they tell me things, right? Like so I'll be writing and just suddenly someone's kind of like tapping on my shoulder, like, I got a secret, and it's like, okay, how am I going to weave that in? What kind of red herrings can I kind of weave in as well? Or sometimes, like, there are things that I will write thinking I'm going to go one direction with it, and then when I get to the end and circle back around, I just realize, like, actually that would be a perfect setup to connect to this piece later. So, and I do like to outline in the beginning, just so I kind of have a roadmap, so I don't like get writer's block or get completely stuck. So it kind of is like writing by numbers, if you will, like just kind of connecting the dots. But sometimes, I surprise myself along the way. So a lot of that comes in later drafts. And
So it's authentic.
Yeah.
Authentic twist. Authentic. So this is the last character I want to bring up. I don't think this is a spoiler because it is in a synopsis, so I'm not going. I don't think it's a spoiler. But regret is not only a big theme in a novel, but it's also a character name. So how did you approach her character? Like, did you know how, well, you just said you kind of did it, but did you know how her story was going to end when you first wrote Regret?
Yeah, so Regret is the witch in the woods, right? She's cursed, and it's probably not spoiler to say she is grown up in this town. It's years later. Her name in the normal part of her life was Evelyn. So there's kind of like this back timeline that we kind of visit as the main character is trying to figure out how to free her. So she's going into old town history, talking to town elders and stuff, trying to piece together what happened before she was cursed and trapped at the lake. Regret, I really liked the idea of externalizing that emotion. So I was saying before about these emotions, these heavy ones that kind of can run in the background. So by making Regret a physical character, it allows our main character to confront this emotion at a distance. So now Regret is not just something she can feel, it's something she can talk to, something she can negotiate with, something she can bargain with, something that can literally haunt her. And I think what was really fun and what I hope that my readers can get out of it at the end is that sometimes monsters are not the scariest thing, right? Like, so sometimes sitting in the consequences of our own actions are scarier than any monster. because you can outrun a monster, right? But you can't outrun yourself.
That's true.
So throughout the book, we know that she's trying to figure out how to free this witch, right? But it really becomes about confronting what's going on with herself personally. And while it's scary thinking like, oh, I can't outrun myself and there's a monster in me, like, what do I do? But the good thing is when you decide that you're ready to confront that, look in a mirror, right? Like, it's right there. You don't have to go chase down a witch in the woods. You can just, it's right in front of you. So it's an opportunity for the main character, Simone, to see this emotion at a distance, this physical thing, but it leads her to look inward. So that's kind of how I wanted to use that character. Yeah.
That is amazing. Whoa, that's the answer right there. I gotta sit with that one. That's amazing. That's deep. But I feel like you did that perfectly, especially with the second, like last quarter of the book. Things really like go up a notch in the last quarter of the book, and I feel like it all came together. To talk about Simone one last time, one thing I liked about her was, in the book, she's kind of the it girl. She's top 3 academics. She's very popular. And she has a father who's an ex-NFL player. So she's not really struggling for nothing. But I like that because there are points in the book where she's juggling with a lot. Trauma, so much. And it almost feels like other characters in the novel minimize what she's going through because she's the it girl, because she's so well put together. Was that intentional? Were you trying to say something about who is allowed to struggle? Because sometimes people think if you got all this money, ain't no way you want to do anything in life.
Yeah, for sure. Simone is, I talk about her, she talks about wearing masks a lot.
Thanks.
I have many masks. That's like a phrase, that's a sentence she says sometimes. So she's very aware. She's very smart, like you said, top of her class.
Aware.
She's very aware that she will put on different faces for different people. But it's not so much that those faces are false. They're just different pieces of herself. And she does fear that if she exposes certain ones to certain people, that's going to mess with this perfectly kind of structured life that she's built for herself. So she is very aware. She goes to like a school with like a mixed population of people and stuff. And she's like, she considers her friends true friends, but she's definitely very intentional about what she shows to certain people. And there are only a few people in her life that she feels like she can take away all the masks. And I think when she does take away the mask, it's instead of like removing the mask, revealing something that no one has seen before, it's more like them all coming together and revealing her full self. So, you know, with her best friend, Kira, with the Corey, the kind of love interest in the book, that's when she can be her truest, most fullest self. But she still fears that if they have access to that uncovered face for too long, that they're going to see things that they don't like and want to go away from her. And she certainly has things that she regrets, that she doesn't want them to know about, because she just, you know, at the end of the day, she wants love, she wants her friends. She is a girl who has made mistakes but has the very best intentions, and is just having to learn the hard way that good intentions don't always mean a good outcome, and that sometimes being sorry is not enough to repair damage that you've done, and trying to decide when it's worth it to confront it anyway, even though that might mean you know, you don't get what you want out of the situation.
I love that.
That's deep. Again, speaking of things that even though you have good intentions, things don't always work out the right way. It felt like during the book, there was a conversation at the end specifically about, she said, intention versus impact. How do you feel about that conversation? Because it felt like Corey's character was trying to tell Simone, like, you kind of shortchanging your intentions. You have give more credit to yourself for wanting to do the right thing. She kind of beats herself up a lot.
She does. She struggles with the difference between guilt and shame. So guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am bad. So she's done bad things. She's done things that she should not have done. But she takes that in to mean like there's something deeply flawed about me, something that's not deserving of love, not deserving of forgiveness. I have to hide it, and she knows that she, you know, didn't mean to hurt anyone with some of the choices that she's made, But she's also aware that that doesn't change how it's going to be perceived. But because she just she can't forgive herself for what she's done, she kind of pushes people away. So that's where Corey's trying to say, like, we mess up. Like, you like, at least when it comes to the people you love, and the people that are the closest to you, those are the people who stick with you and understand, and I think can better appreciate the intent part of it. I think with strangers and people we don't know, you have to be extra careful about the impact and how you're landing. But these people who have committed, like, I love you, I'm in your life, I'm there for you. These are the ones you can talk through it and you can get through these things with. But she's still learning that. She's a kid.
Yeah.
So
She's still a kid, even though she feels so well put together throughout the book. She's definitely moments where she struggles with being vulnerable, except to certain people. And even then, it's still kind of hard to take that.
Yeah, and the kid thing, like, I think it's interesting with teenagers, and I see this at school all the time, is there are some that seem very mature and very grown up, and you have to remind yourself sometimes they're kids. And there are others that seem very immature and very silly, and they will do things sometimes that remind you, wait, you're growing up. And I think there's a lot of different kinds of maturity, and they don't all come up at the same time. So Simone is someone just externally, and probably to a lot of adults in her life, seem really put together. But when you are hearing her perspective, I think you can, especially as an adult reading her, you can see where she's being too hard. You can just see those things better.
Like,
So I like to write characters where you sometimes can see those differences in where they're strong and where they're weak and where they're growing and where they're, figured out.
I know I keep saying I don't want to bring up any more characters, y'all, but I just want to really paint the picture because the character cast in this book is so, like, organic. You have Simone, our main character. You have Kira, her best friend. I really like their dynamic, especially early on. Mama D was really reminded me of Mama Odie from Princess and the Frog. Y'all watch that? Feels like Mama D. I want to talk a little more about Corey, because Corey, to me, might be my favorite character, because that's one of my favorite male main characters ever now, because I really feel like he's so cool. He's such a cool guy. What inspired Corey, or Simone for that matter?
Corey is sweet, and I love a sweet black boy. And we need more of that. We need, like, diverse representation of these guys. And he's very unproblematic. He's very wholesome. And he is very, just who he is.
Authentic.
Yeah, and he sometimes he's a little awkward, whatever, and when he is, though, like, Simone is too, but she's better at masking that stuff. And he doesn't care about masking it. And it almost, like, she loves that she can kind of unmask with him too, and they can just both be goofy, awkward kids together.
Him open.
Yeah, she loves that she can do that with him, but it's also kind of scary because, like you said, it's vulnerable. But and that's not to say he's without flaws. He's done his own little things that are questionable. But yeah, I just really liked to write this just soft. And I don't mean that's not a negative, right? Like, just very in touch with who he is and not too worried about anybody else's opinion. He's happy. He wants to be friends with Simone. They've kind of drifted apart due to some things that had happened in their past. But he's very much just chill to wait until she's ready to talk again and not be pushy, which I really I like to read.
He's the coolest, and I like him. Even though you said soft isn't an insult, it isn't, and that made me think about how in this world, it kind of feels like young black boys are pushed to be hard, to be tough and rugged, even if inside they have, like, some softness to them, like they don't have to be what the world wants them to be.
And he is, and he's, like, soft, but also, like, when it's go time and it's time to get out there and help someone, like he's strong too, Yeah, so. I loved writing Corey too. He was one of my favorites.
He's my favorite character. I hope other young adult authors take heed, because that is how you write a male main character. To switch gears for a little bit, while doing research for this interview, I saw an article that just made me smile. Y'all really made me smile. And this article said that they caught her regret has a lot of references to my mom's favorite TV show, and apparently one of your favorite TV shows too, The Twilight Zone.
Yes.
So
Oh,
can you tell us about your love of The Twilight Zone, and how that love made it through?
Yes, I adore the original Twilight Zone, like the black and white
I
version of the show.
Shout out to the
Yes, this is my mommy.
Hey, Mama.
Me, her, and my great grandmother, who was with us for 100 beautiful years. We used to watch that show together all the time. That was my first introduction to a lot of themes that I love in thrillers and horror. Dark deals, twisty kind of endings and things like that. So I feel like that show will embed itself into anything that I write. So yeah, I did like a whole listicle of like episodes that inspired this. But I just really love how that show, and I like the pace of the show too. It's like it's not like super in your, I don't know, it's just like a kind of a chill way of explaining. It's just the suspense and the way it kind of bleeds through the whole thing. That's a vibe that I really like. So I like, obviously like the dangers coming suspense is fun, but the unanswered questions suspense is my favorite. And I think some people hate it. I love when a book ends and you have a couple of little things to chew on. You know, I don't need a perfectly neat bow. I like like the main threads, right? But I love something to talk about, and I feel like a lot of the Twilight Zone episodes, you know, they can end and you just want to have a conversation, like, okay, like,
what did I just watch?
Yeah, you know, and there's some part that just kind of leaves you like, I want, you know, it's just a little bit to just spark that. So, and I feel like this book at the end, there's something you can, what was your interpretation? You know, you can kind of go there. So I love that kind of suspense. But,
the ending even plays more into the performativity, the character mode, the masking. That ending was crazy. What was your favorite? What's your favorite Twilight Zone episode? You know, I know my favorite is the one with the mask. She's in the hospital and she has a bandages on her face. That was a crazy ending.
That's Eye the Beholder.
Eye the Beholder.
Yeah. What You Need is my favorite, which inspired my debut, Needy Little Things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shout out to Needy Little Things.
Yeah.
Speaking of Needy Little Things, I want to talk about. This is no spoiler, kind of no spoiler conversation. But in the acknowledgments, you said something very interesting. You said, you talked about how while writing this, you experienced the infamous book 2 struggles. You said, Think I Heard Regret challenged you both creatively and personally. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so when I wrote my debut, Needy Little Things, Before I got my publishing deal, which was a 2-book deal for Needy Little Things and this book did not exist at all then. Needy Little Things was fully written. Before that, though, there was another book that I was trying to get published, and I was trying to get a literary agent, which is like step 1 to getting the traditional publishing deal. And I had a lot of interest in that book before Needy Little Things. A bunch of agents were reading it, and I was like, this is it, like, bring on the book deal. There were like 14 agents reading the full manuscript. So I was like, just a matter of time. And, you know, a rejection would trickle in here or there. I'm like, okay, I'm still in the double digits. I got a lot of people considering. And then there was 1 week where I got 4 rejections back to back to back. And it feels different. So like usually when you're trying to get an agent, you'll send them like a short letter and then they'll ask you to read more or they'll say no thanks. Right. When they say no at that stage, it's like, well, they didn't read the book, you know, so you can kind of rub it off. Right. But when they have the whole book and they're like, oh, I'm so excited to read it, and then they reject you, it's like, oh, okay. It's like, you know. Like you did yeah. So that week when I got all those rejections back to back, it felt very crossroads. Like I was like, I can let this be like a judgment on me as a writer and just be sad about it, move on, or maybe this isn't for me, or I can like start something else and fall in love with a new project. So I was like, I need to start writing something else right now and not just sit in this feeling of being rejected. So I started drafting a new book, and anytime a rejection would come through, I was like, let me open up this other one. I'm having a good time with this. So the book that I was drafting was Needy Little Things. So off the like rage of all the rejections, I drafted that book in like 2 months and got an agent like 2 months after that, and she sold it. It was very fast. So that was just like my precious baby book that just everything worked out, just good things all the way through. And then once that book was finished and it was time to actually write this book that they had already paid for, and now I'm on a deadline.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, I was able to write most of Needy Little Things on summer break. This book, I had to start drafting it in the middle of the school year and had less time to get it right, and it was so stressful. And I wasn't used to having, to write like on work days, like having to, right? Like when it's optional, it feels easier. But when it's like I don't have a choice, it was hard to make myself do it. So many tears were shed trying to get this right. Many distressed phone calls to my mother. Many drop-offs of candy and all sorts of things to get through it. So it was a struggle, but I'm happy with how it worked out.
You should be. This is a great book. It was all worth it.
It was not. Yeah, the two were just very different experiences. Trying to get it to exist, but yeah.
Yeah, the duality of publishing. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's just. Speaking of these little things, what do you feel like did you learn from that book that you brought into this book? Like the biggest, what you learned, or maybe the biggest shift in your voice, or your voice as a writer coming into this.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that was another thing that was challenging about this is I had to turn in like a draft for this like 3 days after Needy Little Things came out. So it was like the same week. And the combination of like trying to write this while also getting tagged in reviews and all these other things popping up about my first book and trying not to let that influence too much was really interesting. And obviously try not to read reviews, but sometimes you're seeing stuff and you're hearing things, but I just definitely had to make sure, do my best to shut that out and write the book that I wanted to write without trying to write it for anyone other than me in that moment or past me that needed that book when I was a kid or something, because you can't please everyone at the end of the day, right? But I think my experience with Needy Little Things really reminded me to just control what I can control, and just be proud of what I do, and just do my best with it.
That's the biggest lesson you can learn. Just do your best and see what happens. So, do any of y'all have some questions? I don't want to take up all the time. Y'all got some questions, but I do have a couple more.
I do have a question. You said earlier it took like 10 years later. Did it take you 10 years to write it, or 10 years?
So, before, it was about 10 years before Needy Little Things that I said, I think I might want to get a book published. So I wrote my first book ever. And like I said, I wrote all my life, but the first time I actually wrote a book start to finish was like after saying, I might want to get published. So I wrote that book, finished it. It took me a year to write that one. Which also, when I decided that, I was a baby teacher. I was coaching lacrosse full time. I was also working on my master's degree in biology, and I'm like, I'm gonna write a book too. So that was a perfect timing. So that one took me a year with everything else going on, and I finished it, and I was like, okay, so now I get paid, right? Like I didn't know. It's like I didn't know what happens next. So I really had like, okay, well now what? So then it took me like another year just to learn like, what do you do after you've written a book, and filter through like, what's the difference between self-publishing and traditional, and like, what is a literary? So a lot of learning happened. Then I was like, okay, apparently you need to revise books. So that's something I learned in the process. So I was like, let me try to revise this book. I found like an author that we swapped manuscripts and revised each other's books. She sent back notes, and then I just cried. I was like, what do you mean it's not perfect? And I didn't know, and I didn't know how to receive feedback then. Like, and she had some good points. I just didn't really know what to do with it. So I set it aside. So then there was like a 2-year gap where I wasn't really doing much. Came back to it, tried again. So it was a lot of stops and starts along the way. It was getting into a mentorship program that doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Pitch Wars, where they paired unpublished authors with a published author who knows the industry to kind of help you and like review your book. That was the program that actually got the book before I wrote Needy Little Things to all those agents, those 14. So I learned a lot from that by having a published mentor that helped me. So yeah, it was just learning Yeah.
So did it change, like if you got into this because of your love of writing, did it change once you started the publishing process with all the
It
changes and the
did.
critiques?
It did change, and I think that's a good question because shifting from doing it purely for fun and from the like completely dreaming of what could be staged to it being real. Naturally, you're going to learn some things. You learn about the industry. It's a business and all this kind of stuff that starts kind of filtering in. And sometimes that can be overwhelming. But that's those moments where you kind of have to just rewind, shut the door, block it out, and remember why you do this. So those moments when my student is coming in with an annotated copy, like that's why. Not to try to hit a list or to sell X number of copies. But yeah, when you, and I have this conversation like on school visits a lot, when you kind of make that transition from something being a hobby to being something that's like tied to money and things like that, it does change your relationship with it. That doesn't have to be bad, but it is different. So I think something I've learned is to make sure that there's always a hobby that you have that's not tied to that kind of thing, that's something that's purely for you. So that's like my house plants or cooking or something that's, you know, that you can go to that is just, I just do this just because there's nothing attached to this.
And then one question.
Go ahead.
This is my last question. So I'm going to start reading this, but so Simone, right, the main character, is there some pieces of you in that character?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, in a way, they're pieces of me bleed into all of them. But, yeah, Simone's character, as far as like people pleasing, that was something I struggled with, or just like wanting to just be perceived a certain way and be liked and just all of that. But I do like talking about inspiration for her character. Nina Simone, is who she's named after.
Nina Simone.
Her song, Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, there are two lines from it that I just kept going back to when crafting this character, which is why I named her that. The first is, I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. That's a big one, and if you read, you'll kind of see where that plays in. And the other one is, don't you know, no one alive can always be an angel. And that's something that she has to learn. Like you're not always going to get it right. You're not always going to be good. So that super influenced how I crafted her. And there's a line from Sinners too, which came out after. But if you've seen that movie, what's the line? I'll think of it in a second. Yeah, I'll think of it in a second.
Yeah, folks love Sinners.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Oh, they say the truth hurts, so I lied to you. They say the truth hurts, so I lied to you. Yeah, that's Simone.
That's beautiful.
I was just curious, being a teacher and having, I guess, students of different races and color, writing Simone, who is a black woman. How important did you feel it was to like have this type of representation for this type of character? Also being a black woman, and have your students possibly read that, how see themselves represented?
Yeah, so I teach, most of my students are black at the school I teach, and it was always super important for me to write characters that look like me, look like them, and are represented. I think growing up, I wasn't a big reader. My mom's gonna think like, what are you talking about? But I read, but I would have, more so it would be like bursts. Like when I did read, I went all in. So like I would lock myself in a room all day and read. That's what she remembers. But I wasn't necessarily reading super broadly. I was just, whatever was the most popular stuff was what I was reading. And in the most popular stuff, it was never people that looked like me. That didn't stop me from enjoying, but you know, that was something that I missed out on. So I really wanted to be, and want to continue to craft stories that have that, just because it's like, again, it didn't prevent me from enjoying books, but it could enrich it so much, and just make, just to see that representation is so important. And yeah, especially I think in types of books that you don't always get it in. So I love like the thriller horror genre. Just seeing people of color, I think that's why Jordan Peele is so popular. You know, it's just like you get to see us in stuff that you don't always see us in. Yeah. So that's big. Yeah. So I love that.
Awesome.
That was a great question.
I think you said like you love books that kind of like don't, end with like a perfect bow.
Yeah.
So like, does this end with like a cliffhanger? But like, if it does, like, will there be a sequel, a
Um,
series?
No, it doesn't end on a cliffhanger, but it ends with a.
It ends with something that you'll make you think about what you just read. Like you'll be
Yeah.
like,
It ends with a.
The lasting impression.
Your last impression will stick with you after you read it, and you'll still be thinking about it.
Yeah. My debut, Needy Little Things. People maybe could debate that one ends on a cliffhanger. I didn't intend it to be that way, but again, my tolerance for that kind of like what would be classified as a cliffhanger and what wouldn't might be different than some people's. But for Needy Little Things, the paperback is coming out in December, and I have a bonus chapter for everyone who's yelled. For everyone who's yelled at me about the ending of that book. It does tie up a few extra pieces. But yeah, I think this one doesn't end in a way where like you're like must have sequel.
That's interesting. I kind of want to ask about that. How was it writing another chapter for a book you already published after it was published?
Yeah, that one. So actually, when we were trying to sell Needy Little Things to a publisher, me and my agent, she brought up like, the ending could lead to another book or something extra. So we kind of had in mind like possible, if you wanted. So I had written. I ended up writing a synopsis for a potential sequel if someone was interested. So my publisher ended up doing a 2-book deal, but it wasn't for Needy Little Things and a sequel. It was Needy Little Things and a standalone. So they were content with it just ending like that. But I figured, and especially just from like early reads from friends and stuff, people were pretty split on like, what do you mean that's where it ends? And I love the ending. So I had in my head, like I knew what I meant by the ending. So it wasn't hard to just do a little bit more, and that was actually really fun because I actually wrote it from a different character's point of view, and it was fun to get into that character's head and write as them. Although that character's fun too. So.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Speaking of the hobby, I remember you said something about hobbies. That made me think about Simone and how she's a horror lover. She makes a Halloween party every year. Do you love horror too? Is that one of your hobbies? Is there any scary movies or horror books that influence you?
I love scary movies and spooky things. That's all we watch. It's gotta be scary. Gosh, anytime I get asked a question like this, though, every single movie I've ever seen in my life falls out of my head. But I do have, obviously, I do love them.
Yeah, that's the horror. That's right. I'm the same. Whenever I watch a movie, it's because I'm watching it with my sisters, and they only watch horror. I try to pull up a thriller, and they don't even want to watch it. They gotta be scared. And they don't even be scared.
I have a question. What's next?
I got a couple questions.
Yeah, next, like I said, Needy Little Things paperback with bonus chapter. I'm going to enjoy writing off deadline now that, so like I said, this was a 2-book deal. So I'm going to write something in a relaxed way. But yeah, I definitely have a lot more speculative thriller mysteries in mind. So I think that's kind of my thing. I like thriller, mystery, horror as my lane, but I do like to rope in a little mystical something. Nothing like that'd be like straight fantasy or something, but I do like a touch of
like Mama D character.
Yeah, a little touch of magic, a little something like that. So I like a genre blend in that sense. I think that's a fun way to explore different genres. If you can, like, if you already like thrillers and you can write the thriller and bring in a little something extra, I think it just feels fresh and stuff, especially if you read a lot in one genre.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Before you get into catch quiz, I want to ask, so you said thriller. The next book, are you intended for to be the same audience, like young adult as well? Or?
I have a young adult idea. I have like what I guess would be new adult. That's kind of an age category that publishing has been trying to make happen, but it's not hard to make happen. We were talking about that recently, which would be like kind of like college age.
They don't have no money. That's probably
But that's an interesting age too. And we have this kind of gap. It's like you have YA, which kind of gets you up to 18, and then jump to mid-20s. And you don't, and that's a very struggle age period. A lot of figuring things out. So I have some other ideas like that.
Oh, I have a few. So I want to know first about the original book. Do you think you might return to it at some point now that you've been around the block for a little while? You also have a relationship with an agent. Is it something that they have read at this point? And what's the plan for it? Are we just gonna put it in a box for another 10 years, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, so there are a total of 3 books that I wrote that are not published. So the first one I ever wrote, the one that the person that cried, that book is just not good, to be honest. It's not that the concept is not bad, but like it would need to be just reworked. And I'm not sure that I would go back to that one. I think that book was meant for me to learn, you know, and that's what some things, that's just what it is. And that's not bad. That's fine, you know, sometimes that's what it was for. The book that a lot of agents were considering and saying no on, I wouldn't mind revisiting that one. It might need an age category shift, possibly. There's something about it that's just like not quite right. And I could be interested in that. All of those early books were sci-fi dystopian though. And I did the genre shift for Needy Little Things, partly because I needed to really like separate from what was going on over there. So that's why I was like, let me just try writing something totally different. And like I said, I love this lane that I'm in. But I do love sci-fi dystopian too. That's probably my second big love. All the Artemis Moonjoy stuff, I've been obsessed for weeks about that kind of thing. But yeah, so I would never say any of them are dead. Whether it's like taking pieces and Frankensteining them into something new or completely like revisiting, but they're still on the computer.
Absolutely. Speaking of Frankensteining things, you're a biology person. You got a couple of degrees in biology. Tell us about how that fits into this world, and how are you, or how are you bridging these two worlds? Are you thinking about bridging them? Is it not a thing? Just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, you know, I always go, when I go to school visits and stuff, I have the kids, like, what's up, you know, I'll tell them I'm a teacher. I'm like, what do you think I teach? They always think it's ELA, English. I'm like, no, the next guess is like social studies. No, it's like science is not where they go. But I honestly think science lends itself to mystery writing so well, right? So science is just asking questions, collecting data, analyzing data, figuring out what's valid, what's not. Like, that's what you do in a mystery. So it just like suits itself perfectly to me, and I think that's why I feel so cozy there, just doing that. But as far as like truly weaving it in, I would love to write something like that. I think like a lot of my dystopian stuff was about like disease breakouts and things like that kind of stuff. I'm into that. My stepmother's a forensic pathologist, and my dad was like a blood spatter expert, and they work in that field. So like when there's like stabby scenes, I'm like, I'm like holding up and like for that. So yeah, it weaves in there. I think in Needy Little Things, I purposely made the main character hate science because I just knew my students were going to think that obviously the characters in my book are going to be science nerds. I'm like, no, I know not everyone loves it like me, but yeah, so I like to find my different ways of weaving it in.
Okay, I've got 2 more. Okay, so speaking of the students now, right? I know you mentioned about sometimes they find their way to your work. Like, to what degree are you introducing them to reading as high schoolers? We're always talking about high schoolers being sort of that group that the parents stop buying for them after middle school for the most part. So unless they're just into reading, they're not really doing it unless a teacher is reading to them, maybe. So how do you find you know, the process of maybe reintroducing them to reading in high school? Is this, or are they coming to you, they're already into the books?
Yeah, so I think one of the best things we can do as adults for helping kids read is to model the behavior, right? So it's lunchtime, Miss D's reading a book. What's Miss D reading? So they always see a book on my desk, and they come up to ask me a question, what's that? And even just that little piece of interest, and you might have to chip away at it for a while. So that, I keep books in my classroom that they can borrow. Like I mentioned, I have my books, I have some other books in there that they can borrow whenever they want, and I keep them in a very visible place where if they're coming to ask a question, come to get the bathroom pass. In fact, the bathroom passes are hanging like right by the bookshelf, and so we'll talk about it. If I see a kid reading a book, I'm going to ask them about the book and just engage and have these conversations. If I'm giving an example, I reference books that I've read all the time. Just making sure they're part of a conversation, that books are visible around them, that I talk about books that relate to the things that we're talking about in class, that relate to things that I hear them talking about. So I try to do that. I also have like a little writing club at school, so I try to capture the ones who enjoy writing. A lot of them don't connect reading and writing. I know a lot of, which is, a lot of them love to read but don't write. A lot of them love to write and don't read. So I try to like, especially the ones who want to write. I'm like, you want to write, you gotta read. And it's actually like, it's pretty, a lot, like really almost none of the kids in my writing group were big readers. So that's been something we've been kind of chatting about that I've been trying to like get. But yeah, it's hard, especially with just all the standards and pacing and things that you have to get through. But I try to make sure that I incorporate those things.
Okay, my last question. I swear. My last question is about the agent relationship. Now that you've been successful, you have an agent that you've worked with. Is this your person now, or when you write a new book, you gotta pitch again and go through this process all over again?
Yeah, my agent is my person. I'm fortunate that we are a good match. She's actually based in London, but she's American. She lives in London. But yeah, Molly, that's my girl. But for a lot of authors, it's a trial and error. You've got to figure out, who's a good advocate for you, who you can communicate with well. So usually, like if I have an idea, a couple ideas, I might write up a little synopsis or send her a pitch. Like, what do you think about this? She's really tuned into the business side. She is also one who would never tell me not to write something, but I also can trust her to be honest about like what the market's looking like and do you think this has a shot. So I might send her a few ideas and we can chat about like, this one might be good for, in terms of trying to actually sell it, and this one might be back burner, kind of have those real conversations. But she definitely can be counted on to advocate. If I run into something awkward with my publishers, like for instance, if there was something I didn't like about a cover or something, I could talk to her and be like, can you be the bad guy? Just be like, yeah. So yeah, I really like that relationship with her.
Awesome.
And I've made writer friends too along the way that for them, they would be the first that I would send like a big draft to or something to kind of get, first impressions on before I send it to more.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I have no more. Somebody else asked.
Did you decide, or was it someone else's decision as far as like having a different cover for the UK version and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a different publisher in the UK. So this is published by Wednesday Books, which is an imprint of St. Martin's Press, which is under the Macmillan umbrella, and then in the UK it's published by Bloomsbury. So my literary agent is the one who communicates with the publishers and sells it. So she sold US rights to this publisher and sold UK rights to a different publisher. So they're two separate deals. Now sometimes that happens and the two publishers will agree on the cover and use the same one. But sometimes if they feel like their markets would prefer like a different vibe, they'll go in different directions. So for both of the books, they chose to go in different directions, which means I just got a lot of great covers. So there are two different covers for Needy Little Things as well. I like all of them. I think they all kind of cover different parts of the book. But yeah, that's why.
Is it the same publisher with different, so is it like Macmillan on both ends?
Bloomsbury in UK.
Ah, okay.
So you talked about how important it is to read when you are a writer. What are some of your favorite books or authors?
That's my question.
Yeah.
My question.
Sorry, get to it first.
I mean, I love, and some of these, my favorite book ever is Their Eyes Were Watching God. has nothing to do with what I write as far as genre-wise, but as far as just like writing and story, I love that book. I read it multiple times a year. It's like my comfort book. I love the audiobook too. I do a lot of audiobooks now for just time's sake. Being able to listen while I drive or do chores and things. Also, just when I'm actively writing, I like to just consume books on audio. Just kind of keeps it kind of different for me. But yeah, that's my favorite book of all time. As far as like genre comparisons to me in age category, Tiffany D. Jackson is my big inspo. She was like my first exposure to like Black young adult thriller writers, and there's not a lot. And so yeah, she's my big inspo idol there. Yeah, I got to be on 2 panels with her at 2 different book festivals and was just completely fangirling. It was in Boston and in Texas, and it was so funny and humbling, honestly, because in Texas, we were on a panel together, and then there was a signing after. No, she's Tiffany D. Jackson, right? I was a baby debut. So when it was time to sign books, the signing lines were highly unbalanced. When I say her line was around the corner,
Oh my goodness.
and I had people trickling. And we were seated right next to each other, right? And the way it was set up is people come from her line and then have to like walk by me. So it was like she was just busy, and I was just like, look at mine. And people would be like, oh, I was like, I hadn't heard of you, but now I know that. And honestly, I would have thought that would feel bad, but honestly, it just like felt like one day, I was like, and like I was just happy for her, and I was like, I love her books too. I would be in line too. I was like,
it was right next to her.
Yeah, and she was awesome, and like honestly, so many of the authors that I admire. Nick Stone has been she's so sweet. She did both of my launch events for both my books. I've made so many, and these are just people that just like, they're kind of like the first, Black women that I saw that were writing the kinds of books that I wanted to write, that made me feel like I could do it too. So to now get to like interact with them in real life that's a dream. And I love to see them succeed. So like it was goofy, and it was so funny because later there was like this little after party, and this older man came up to me and was like, I saw you in line, and there wasn't anybody in your line, but you were just smiling. And I was like, yes, I was. I was like, so
Another question about education. No, you sure?
Mine's completely different.
Okay. Another question about education. So I know you said that some of your students have read your book, and then I know one, I think you tried to interview you with your writing club and everything like that. Do you write with them? When you're writing parts of your book, or maybe like ideas, do you even have them analyze parts of your book to like, okay, this is how you can structure something like this? Do you use it as examples for that particular part?
The kids in the writing club seem quite uninterested in my writing, which is fine. They want me to read their stuff.
Okay.
So like they appreciate that I am a writer. Like, we have limited time. They think it's cool or whatever, but they're like, you're a real author. Can you read what I wrote? And I'm happy to. And I think that's what, part of the reason it took me 10 years is because there was so much I didn't know. I didn't have someone to talk to and learn from. I had to do all the research on my own. So to be able to be that person for them and to tell them, like, just give them a head start about what to do if this is what you want to do one day, and look at their writing. And a lot of times, like, when I do read their work, I focus more on hyping them up at this stage, really, because that's what they need to keep pushing forward. So like I like to tell them what's good about what they're doing so that they can enjoy it, because that's the biggest thing that I think you need to keep going in this industry. You can't lose your love for the crafts, like that piece. So fostering that part is what really matters for me with them. And like I said, I'm trying to get my writers to be readers better, like more, which is why like trying to get them to read they just want to talk about what they are doing, and that's okay, So that's what we do.
Awesome.
Oh no.
I have a question. So your books are published in the UK as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the story is told from an American perspective. So I'm curious, like, do you have any idea how the UK teens or readers may react to yours? Because like Knots and Crosses was written in the UK, and so when I read it here, I was like, this is cool. I don't think that young people here would like get it or like it. So what's some of the reactions that you get of your writing from people, readers in the UK?
It's been positive, and you know, I think a lot of that might just have to do with just how American culture is just
How they consume it.
yeah, it's just kind of everywhere. So and I think it's unfortunate, but like I think it's easier for them to take in our stories than when you try to get our teens. And it's not how it should be, but I think it's kind of just so I've gotten lots of getting tagged in like fun videos from people over there too, and it's really nice.
Have you gone?
So.
Have you done any bookstores?
Nope, I've not done book stuff over there. I did get some child in Ireland sent me some fan art. And that's amazing. Yeah, Needy Little Things is also getting a Polish translation and Portuguese. Yeah, Polish and Portuguese, which I was like, if I could have guessed where I would get some extra deals, it would have been those places, but I will take it. So it'll be really interesting to see. Especially like I'm curious because, you know, there's like some lingo and stuff, but like how does that translate? That's for them to figure out. But yeah, so yeah, that's UK and Commonwealth, so it's like it's in other places too, Australia and things like that. So occasionally a reader will reach out from one of those places, and I'm just like, that's so wild. My book is certainly more well traveled than I am. One day.
That's amazing. Awesome.
I have a question. So we're excited that you came for well, it's also the Agnes Scott College Alumni Weekend, and you are a fellow Scotty, so we're so Scotty Pride. I don't know if there's any other Scotties in the room, but can you speak a little bit about if your Agnes Scott experience shaped your journey as an author, anything along those lines?
I think just the women's college environment did a lot for me in terms of just my confidence in seeing other women be awesome and chase their dreams and shamelessly be good at what they're good at and interested in what they're interested in. So I think that is the big thing. Like I've never felt hindered by being a woman. Like that's like I've seen amazing women all my life, amazing role models, and I went to college with a bunch of amazing women who are all doing some pretty cool things. So I think it's that piece more than anything. Yeah.
My other question is about your hobbies. You talk about plants and loving plants and those kinds of things, but what are you growing in your garden or your home?
My very temperamental fiddly fig that is like 7 feet tall or something.
Oh, wow.
And my mom was convinced I doesn't have enough sunlight. Well, she has a little baby leaf that is sprouted, and I sent her mom like seriously, it looked like a sunflower seed coming out. I took a picture, zoomed in, and I sent it to her. I was like, he's not getting enough light. Okay. Yeah, I have a bunch of pothos over my bookshelf that are just beautifully, making their little vines and things like that.
If you ever want to donate any to a bookstore, I know one.
Yeah. I see it's time for some trimming. So.
Do you have both books? Do you have Needy Little Things here today?
No, I got it.
No.
Sadly.
It's sometimes hard to find publishers.
Go ahead, brother. You want to ask one yet?
No, you good.
Yeah,
Oh.
we can do that.
I was gonna ask. Let me see. There's like a black horror renaissance right now in film right now, especially with directors like Jordan Peele, Nia DaCosta. Let me see, Brian Coogler now. Would you? Part one of the question: would you want this to be adapted, and ideally, who would you want to adapt it? And two, are you watching what black horror movies have you seen lately? I know They Will Kill You just came out with Zazie Beetz. As God Is coming out. That's another like horror thriller, like once again black leads and everything of nature. Or like, are you watching those with your mom?
Yes, I would love this to be adapted. I mean, that'd be amazing. I don't know much about how any of that works. But yeah, that would be, and I wouldn't even know where to start with who would do what. Just the possibility would be.
You could.
I mean, yeah, that would be amazing. I think that's what I really enjoy about listening to the audio. It's so cool because especially like, when I listen to the audio, they don't necessarily read every line the way that I like intended necessarily. So getting that kind of interpretation is cool. It can be jarring at first, like like usually when I'm first listening, I'm like I'll listen and then I have to kind of like I can't. It's like, not that it's bad, but it's just like it's just like not what I expected.
Yeah.
But it's I can't control how anybody reads it either. So it's always going to be interpreted in ways that I didn't expect. So hearing that is really interesting to kind of see how this person chose to go about it. And I know that just from what I do understand about books being adapted and stuff, how much the author really gets to say can vary quite a bit. And lots of times it's not very much at all. So they really are just selling the rights. And then from there, it's kind of like, get what you get. So that would be pretty interesting to see. I have not been, I've gone to the movies once in like this year. That was to see Project Hail Mary.
Oh, so that was
Really great.
Yes, that was
Really good movie.
yeah. So I'm so behind on what's coming out or what's coming up. But I I'm in like crazy teacher mode right now. But when summer comes, we'll get caught up and we'll do all that. But yeah.
I got a question with that. If you could adapt it, movie, TV show, or like animated.
Well, I never even considered animated.
Right.
Yeah. I think TV would be fun, and I say that as probably just like a book person who wants all the details in there, but I think it could be fun, just like as far as those kind of questions and like ending on a chapter and like what's coming next and being able to kind of thread your way through. So probably TV. But yeah.
That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
This is a spinoff. What the brother said. I think a Netflix series of 6 to 8 episodes would be fantastic. Second season or something. The anime would be cool too.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking. Anime,
Maybe put it in your agent's ear.
I mean, I have a film agent who's meant to shop that stuff. But you don't really hear from them unless they got some news.
Yeah. Back to your process when you're writing. I know like some writers will seclude themselves and they don't want to talk to family, like nobody sees them for months. Do you find like when you're listening to other authors on audiobooks, it kind of helps you come out of that? I guess not box yourself in, or does it help your process more?
Yeah, I think it's important when I'm working on stuff to continue reading. And like I said, the audio is easier for me than like reading a physical book. Sometimes it'll help like to not listen or read the same genre while I'm writing, because I don't want to like start copying somebody or doing too similar. And it's easier if I just kind of like, I'll listen to Project Hail Mary while I'm writing my thriller or something to keep that separation, but still engaging with story.
One more question. Have you had anybody like get back to you with either book where it was like it ministered to them, like they saw how they battled regret or something, and by the end of the book they felt like relieved, or like some of that weight came off of them because they didn't have to continue feeling like they had to be perfect for everybody?
Yeah, I have not had someone directly say anything to me like that. Have I read a couple of reviews maybe that brought that up? Yeah, I've seen. Sometimes people will tag me. Sometimes I get a little nosy and go look. But I have seen that, and that always feels really good. And usually what I'll do, or what I've learned to do, is when I kind of want to know what people are saying, I just have like a friend like, go grab some 5-star reviews for me and send them, because I don't want to see all that other stuff. But and it's hard because like I think that's what I learned with Neat Little Things. I was reading all the reviews, like especially like the early ones that come out like before the book comes out, I was reading every single one. So there were like 300 reviews for Needy Little Things before it published, and I read all of them.
Wow.
And not all of them were good. What I was realizing is that the negative ones would linger so much longer. I could read like 5 glowing, beautiful, amazing reviews, and then one negative, 1-sentence review, and that's the thing that's stuck in my head. And I didn't like that because I realized that like it felt like I was like disrespecting all the people that loved it, and it's like, why am I letting this? And so the solution, I had to just stop altogether because I couldn't trust myself to not read those ones. So I get people, I'll get a friend or somebody to go grab the positive ones for me, because like hearing the positive feedback does help, especially when I'm not sure or having a hard time with something new, like reminding myself that there are people out there enjoying it, there are people out there that's really resonating with, or even helping in some way or making them feel seen. Those are the things that can really encourage me when I'm having trouble or thinking, well, maybe I should just stop, or like, oh, no one's buying, or you get in your head about that kind of stuff. So getting those reminders that there are people who are enjoying it and appreciating it is really, really nice.
So there's been so many incredible responses to so many incredible
Yeah,
questions.
great question.
I have one last question I want to ask. What do you hope stays with readers the most after finishing the book?
I hope that they understand that one mistake does not have to define you, and that sometimes failing to confront painful things just causes it to fester and manifest in even more negative ways. So really kind of pushing yourself to just look in the mirror and address the things that are painful or difficult is better than trying to bury it or suppress it or do things like that.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Channelle, thank you so much for being here. And Nico, thank you so much for being a wonderful conversation partner. On behalf of A Small Place Bookshop, we would like to present you with some flowers. And Nico, we have flowers for you too.